Capping NFL football professionally and publicly since 1988, and I think I picked up a few secrets, do's, and don'ts of betting preseason NFL football. In fact, I would go far as to say quite possibly the biggest gap between the sharp and the square of any type of American team sport betting at the very least. And this is especially true in those non-dress rehearsal weeks. Now, remember, the NFL used to play 4 preseason games. Now they play 3 season games, so the dress rehearsal is the second to the last preseason game. Used to be for years and years and years. The third game now in week 2 of the preseason, but of course we have that extra regular season game. But a lot of bad line moves happen in the NFL preseason, so chasing steam is an even worse idea than in the NFLX, and for plenty good reasons. We're going to tell you why. Here are some don'ts. Do not bet on teams that are starting the most regulars. When it comes out that a certain team, they're only going to be starting 2 guys in their preseason game, the public loves betting on the team with the familiar names. In non-dress rehearsal, even if one team is playing, say, 8 starters on offense and 6 starters on defense, let's just say one team's playing 16 starters and the other team's playing only 7 starters. Well, the public's going to bet the hell out of the team that's playing the 16 starters, but in a non-dress rehearsal week, they're only playing 2 to 3 series maximum, and especially in week 1, it's just ridiculous the way people overreact. They may only play 1 series, so it's completely irrelevant, and no, there's not any trickle-down thing where if the team's going to play its starters, if their team's going to play more starters, that somehow that makes them a much deeper team. Not necessarily. Don't outsmart yourself on that. Do not bet on teams. This is one I really love. Do not bet on teams with former starting quarterbacks as backups. I remember the old John Kitna. I used to call it the John Kitna intangible. Just because a team, their number 3 guy is someone who started 21 games in the NFL, there is a reason why they are former starters. They're generally locked in as a veteran backup, or they're just completely overrated, underachieving, washed up, and at best, destined to be journeyman backups. I would much rather go with young, hungry quarterbacks convinced that they can start, convinced that they can be stars in the NFL. Remember, they're going up against the vanilla defenses. You might say that in the regular season, if you have an emergency starter who's a veteran, that's good, but not in the preseason. Give me a talented young guy where he's not going to have to really read all that many defenses. So again, that is such a mistake that people make. They love the familiar. Don't bet on this ridiculous belief that first-year coaches are eager to get a win. I think it was a tip sheet like back in the 1980s. Maybe first-year coaches had gone on a significantly insignificant run, and then this became just a myth that people would bet. Usually, if anything, it's quite the opposite. It's the first-year coaches who know their personnel less than the veteran coaches, and they're going to be more inclined to take a look at everybody. They don't really even know their own personnel. So that is another grave mistake. Hence, fading line moves, because there's so many square movements, is usually a good bet. That being said, though, sometimes the sharps will fade it. I've seen a lot of times where a line will move maybe 1 point the other way, and then all of a sudden the sharps know that that's square information, and they'll bet it back. So you do want to study line moves a little bit more in the NFL preseason, but contrarian betting is especially good in the NFL. It's better in the NFL preseason than it is in the regular season, and better than it is in, say, college football regular season, again, because there are just so many square traps that Joey Bag of Donuts fits into. And make sure you watch or listen to our podcast when we talk about contrarian betting, where the square player, we love to go against the $5 and $10 bettors. So it's all about the number of bets, not about the amount of money when it comes to contrarian betting. And this is even more true in the NFL preseason. So again, basically to recap, we love teams that are playing unproven, young, hungry potential starters who feel they have something to prove, that are basically playing with a regular season, if not a playoff intensity. And don't be one of these squares who outsmarts themselves and claims the preseason is merely a crapshoot. Again, having done this for, 34? I don't even know. Since 1988 is when I've done this professionally. I was betting years before that. The golden rule, the books, well, I have quite a few golden rules, but high up there. Books and squares hate uncertainty, but we professional gamblers love it. So make sure you visit offshoreinsiders.com before placing a bet. You've got only the greatest sports services tracing their roots back to the score phone. As you know, the Master Luck line has been around since 1970 on the score phones, is the old 976 Luck line. So visit offshoreinsiders.com.